On behalf of the American Meditation Institute, hello and welcome to our second conversation on your conscience with Leonard Perlmutter and Jenness Cortez Perlmutter. Our guest this morning is the filmmaker Mahiema Anand, and we'll be talking about the interplay between the conscience and creativity. My name is Jennifer Masters, and I had the privilege of serving as editor for the book that we launched a few weeks ago, Your Conscience. I hope you've ordered and received your copy by now. If you're a student at AMI, the material will feel familiar, but our hope is that it might speak to you in a new way and that you will choose to share it with your non-AMI friends and your family. This book was written for newcomers and for people in pain. That is to say, it was written for all of us. This morning, we are pleased to welcome Mahiema Anand to AMI. Mahiema began her career working in the media for major advertising agencies in her native India. On a backpacking trip across Australia's east coast in the late 1980s, she met filmmaker Ken Dyer, who taught her the craft of documentary filmmaking and changed the trajectory of her life. Upon her return, she worked as a producer for several major media outlets, including BBC Wales, before becoming an independent producer and director for Columbia TriStar and Turner Broadcasting, among other outlets. Mahiema believes that every creative artist has a moment of truth. And for her, it happened around the year 2000. She was on assignment for Columbia TriStar and AXN to make a film about India's Aghoris, practitioners of extreme tantric rituals, in the holy city of Varanasi. She spent an entire night sitting on the banks of the Ganges, inhaling toxic fumes and watching corpses burn until dawn. Mahiema describes the meaning of that moment like this: watching death and the philosophy of life unravel itself with such vividness defined my purpose as a filmmaker. Believe it or not, it's been 20 long years and I have yet to touch fiction. Since then, Mahiema's work has revolved around stories and people associated with spirituality, mysticism, paranormal experiences, and alchemy that explore some of the lesser known and lesser understood aspects of the world that we live in. Her most recent creative expression, Shifting Tides, is now in its second season and available on her YouTube channel. Welcome, Mahiema.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
We're so delighted that you're here. As a fellow creative, Jenness Cortez Perlmutter will also participate in our conversation this morning. In addition to being the co-founder and co-director of AMI, Jenness is a prolific artist and distinguished figure in the revival of classical realist painting. She's had more than 40 solo exhibitions throughout the US. Her work is in numerous public collections, including New York State Museum and Skidmore College, as well as the private collections of Presidents Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton, and Her Royal Highness Queen Elizabeth II. Finally, to those of you who may not be AMI students, I extend a very special welcome, and I offer this brief introduction of Leonard, author of Your Conscience and our beloved teacher. Leonard is the co-founder and co-director of the American Meditation Institute and the originator of National Conscience Month. In addition to teaching at AMI, Leonard has served on the faculties of the New England Institute of Ayurvedic Medicine in Boston and the International Himalayan Yoga Teachers Association in Calgary, Canada. He has taught workshops on the benefits of meditation and yoga science at the MD Anderson Cancer Center, Kaiser Permanente, the New York Times Forum on Yoga, multiple nursing and medical schools, and the US Military Academy at West Point. Since 2009, Leonard's 6-week foundation course on yoga science has been certified for CMEs, continuing medical education credits, by the American Medical Association and the American Nurses Association. So now to our program. We will leave time at the end of the conversation for questions from the audience, so please feel free to type those questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen at any time throughout our discussion this morning. Without further ado, namaste, Jenness, and thank you so much for opening up this morning's conversation on your conscience.
Namaste, and hello to all of you. Namaste. Mahiema, it is a pleasure to speak with you. As a painter, the interplay of conscience and creativity is a subject that has been on my mind for a long time, big part of my life. And I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about how you would define conscience, especially as it relates to your own creativity?
To begin with, I'd like to go back a little to my personal life. Uh, as you know, you've spent a lot of time in India. As you know, that there is a lot of conditioning, which of course is there in many other cultures, but in India specifically, especially for a girl child, there is a certain set of norms and way of life a girl is supposed to live. And I was born in reasonably traditional setup, Punjabi North Indian setup, but there were still taboos and there were still restrictions and there were still conditioning. And while I was growing up, I think I was just born with a rebellious attitude and also having a very strong sense of conscience, so I didn't understand it then, you know. But as I was growing up, I realized that I wanted to walk against the tide for everything. And I reached a point when I realized that I had to live my truth. I had to live, I had to be able to face the mirror and be my own person. And how could I do that is what I came to realize at a time when I was getting pressurized to marry. Because that is the time, you know, when you've studied enough, when you have known all the things to be done as a girl in the house, and you know everything. So you're ready for marriage. But but that is the point when I ask this question to myself: do I want to do that? And when I do that, what am I going to be answering myself if my soul doesn't want to? So that's when I was a bad daughter. I actually bought myself a ticket and ran away to Australia. But much later, that of course was an act which caused a lot of pain to my parents. But I also realized that if I hadn't done that, I would have spent a life of a lie. And that's when I would have probably gone against my conscience. So so I think much later, in a nutshell, if I understand, I understood conscience without knowing the meaning of conscience,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So it was like my action, probably somewhere at a very deep subconscious level, was playing up the conscience, right?
Yes.
And that's why I wanted to lead a life when I was 100% truthful to myself, 100%. And of course, when you walk the unknown path and you do this journey against the tide, there are tremendous amount of fear attached to it. You know, fear of insecurity, fear of getting lost, fear of just being left abandoned. You know, all those fears. But out of those fears, there rises a creativity. There rises a spark of creativity, and that's when I realized in Australia that I did not want to be a part of advertising. I did not want to be a part of the rat race. I wanted to create. I wanted to create something which could impact not only my life but others' lives as well. And that little seed was planted by Ken Dyer. He was 50 years older than me, but we completely fell in love with one another because I was working at a bar trying to make some money at night, and he would come for a drink, and just got chatting, and that's it. He kind of adopted me, and I traveled with him, and I learned documentary filmmaking, and I realized that out of the insecurities which led me to the bar to make the money so that I could sustain myself, there arose this creative spark, and that kind of became my trajectory for the rest of my life. You know, every time I stepped into an unknown territory, I knew there would be a creative thing coming out.
Mahima, that's
So
beautiful.
Can I just add just something that comes up for me? I'd like to go back to the beginning of your story where you mentioned that you felt intuitively that you were relying on your conscience even before you understood what the conscience was.
Mhm.
And this is a hardship that most people have because people think that the conscience is in our head and that
Mm-hmm.
and that it's an intellectual understanding.
Yes.
But conscience is everywhere. In fact, it's in our gut. And we know that the gut is our second brain, and we can feel things physiologically very
Mm-hmm.
often sooner than we can intellectualize it.
Correct.
So, what you were reacting to definitely was the conscience speaking to you on a physiological basis because you were a young child
Mm-hmm.
and you were not ready to understand and assimilate and apply an intellectual philosophy, so to speak, or science, but
Yes.
you acted on it and you
Correct.
knew that it was the truth for you, and another reality would not have been the truth for you, and you chose the Shreya. You chose the highest good
That's
as
true.
best as
That's,
you understood that moment.
that's yes. And the second example is what I'm currently living, which we'll talk about later.
Good, good.
Yeah.
I would go so far as to say it's not just in your head, it's not just in your gut, it's in your heart. And from Mahiema, from your story, I think you were in love with it even then, even before you had a name for it, for your creativity
Yeah.
that was waiting
Yeah.
to be born.
You could say that. Yes. Maybe.
And that's
So
your experience too, Jenness.
yes, Mahiema, your story is more dramatic than mine, but it is a very similar thing where I had to make the break too. And I was a barmaid, as you were.
Mm.
And I worked many, many jobs to make myself, to pay for my way, for the training that I knew I needed in order to do the creative work. As with you, I really didn't even know what it was. I just knew I was being called.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was
Exactly.
more important than, I hurt my family maybe for a while. I hurt, the hardships, as is true in much of life. The very painful hardships are
Mm.
beautiful gifts in retrospect.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
mentioned your relationship with Ken Dyer. And this brings up a question I'd like to ask you, and that is about working in partnership with others for creative purposes.
Mm-hmm.
I have been very blessed to have found Leonard, as Leonard has found me, and we've worked together now we met 50 years ago. So
Wow.
I was wondering what your experience is of working with others in creative work.
Uh, well, I've been quite fortunate. Of course, there were a lot of struggle because I was in the hub of Bollywood. I was living in Bombay for nearly 20 years, and I was living in an area which was surrounded by commercial television and film people.
Mhm.
So not very many people really understood what I wanted to do and what I was doing. But fortunately, I it was as if they were either I was attracting the right kind of people or they were getting pulled towards me. I don't know. But it was as if the right people would just jump in. And also I found within my work circle, I found a lot of like-minded professionals outside India and who continue to work with me even till today. So it's been over 2 decades, and I have the same team and expanded team.
That's
But
fantastic.
on a personal level, I don't know. I don't know whether it's a litmus test God is putting me through. I don't know, or has put me through. But I went through 17-year-long marriage. I have a beautiful son from that marriage, but I had to part ways because somewhere I felt that my role with that being in this lifetime was over. We couldn't grow under the same roof. We couldn't really uh, expand. So we parted very amicably. Uh, but there was no way we could have continued the marriage together. He still is a father to his son, but as a partner, we had to part ways. But I would say that he definitely was planted there in my life to make me who I am.
So this is
Definitely,
all Guru's grace. Everything that you're
absolutely,
talking about is Guru's grace. If
yes,
we are dedicated to the truth that we hear in our heart, in our head,
yeah,
in our gut, if we listen to the conscience, despite all of the pressure to conform, to
yeah,
conform, not that people are malicious, it's just a habit, uh, and to go our own way, uh, then the universe begins to support us. Uh,
correct,
we
yeah,
experience this all the time. Uh,
yeah,
w- uh, we've been working, teaching since 1996 when Swami Rama asked us to teach. And we were thinking about doing a book. It was the time during the early days of the pandemic when we started to become quarantined. And all of a sudden, we had a new participant in our satsang who traveled 3 hours each way to come for guided meditation and satsang. That would be Jennifer, who uh, is uh, our announcer here, our narrator here
mm.
today, and she identified herself as a book editor, and that she had, and my first reaction was, "Of course you are. We need a book editor." And so we've been waiting for this book editor to arrive. And so here she is, and she's just done a phenomenal job. And it's just
Yeah,
because she loves it too. It's her passion, it's her creative outlet.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it's Guru's grace because there's somebody who's always watching over you. Because now when people tell me about their experiences of ugly divorces, I can't seem to fathom, I can't understand. How can a divorce, how can separation of two people who love each other be difficult? I
Well,
can't understand,
so
because for me it was so beautiful and so amicable, you know. Uh, and it was necessary at that point in time. It was necessary, and I could have parted ways earlier than that, but I did not, because a voice within told me I've got to complete this karmic journey with him
that's right.
in this lifetime. I'm not pulling it, I'm not taking it ahead.
So
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 yeah.
relationships come for a reason, a
Hmm.
season, or a lifetime.
Or a lifetime,
And it's up to each
absolutely
of us to identify which is which,
correct,
and honor the integrity of each kind of
correct,
relationship.
absolutely, absolutely,
Which
yeah,
that brings up another question I have for you, Mahiema.
yeah, yeah,
Um, your um, your bio mentions your experience with the Aghoris,
yeah,
and that brings to my mind the idea of Kalima as both being a lethal and a power of creativity. And
correct,
what you're saying about your observation of other divorces, certainly there is creativity that is released in destruction. And that is an essential part of creativity.
correct,
I think when we were in Rishikesh, the closeness to death that I don't mean our physical death, but death was there. I mean, we were on the Ganges, and I don't think a day went by that we didn't see a corpse or part of a corpse in that river. And just the whole attitude of death as a part of life, and even as something given, was something that I think that trip to India gave to us. It was one of the many gifts.
Let me just interject a little story. We were at the ashram in Swami Rama's ashram in Rishikesh, and we noticed that every morning a next door neighbor would do his prayers. He would walk out into the Ganges and he would be doing his prayers for, it must be a half hour, 3/4 of an hour every morning.
He waded in waist deep.
Yes. And it was so beautiful because one morning we noticed that there was a corpse coming down the Ganges. And
it was right at the edge, bobbing against the bank.
And it was definitely on a trajectory that was going to come in close contact with our neighbor there, who was doing his prayers every morning. And this gentleman didn't stop a beat as the corpse came down in a way of honoring. He just took a step back with pranam, and then as the corpse went by, he resumed his prayers.
Amazing.
It was so beautiful and so poignant.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that trip, with that incident in particular, but in others as well, made us very much aware of death, or appreciative of the power of death, in a way that most Americans are very carefully shielded from.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was wondering particularly what your thoughts were about death and creativity, about destruction and creativity as one operation.
Yeah, I completely believe that out of complete destruction, there is construction. You've got to come down completely as rubble to rise again.
Yes.
You've got, I mean, it's one of the fundamental truths. Like even in Autobiography of a Yogi, he says that like a snake comes out, shedding the skin. It's a rebirth for the snake. It's same as for a human being. Only when you realize that, like a serious calamity, even shifting tides is all about that. The aha moment or the transformation moment is not the beautiful starry moment. It's a moment which comes out of deep calamity. It's a moment which comes out of deep pain. It's a moment that can come out of complete unknown experience which you're not prepared for. You may lose a loved one, you may be dying in a hospital with an illness, and then you'll have this beautiful awakening. It can be any of these incidents, and that's when the creation takes place. This is my firm belief.
The challenge that we have is that the ego defines this type of a change as annihilation, the end of everything.
Yes,
and
it does.
And is presently not open to the experience of recognizing that change is really growth.
Yes,
change is really
but
growth.
if you do and you bypass that egoic thought, then you're really in for a miraculous change.
That takes courage. That
takes courage. Of course. So the point is, ultimately it comes down to courage. Conscience equals to courage. Do you have the courage to live your truth?
That's right.
Do you have the courage? Ultimately it comes to this. Everything is all about courage.
Yes.
I mean, if you may permit, I just like to give you a little brief on why and how I got here, where I am today. That, all these past 16 months, 12 to 16 months I've spent during the pandemic, I've spent on creating the show, Shifting Tides. And I was talking to people, not recognizing or realizing that it's actually turning me around inside out. It's spinning me at a level which I'm not even aware of. And it brought me to a point that I said, dang, it's like I have to recalibrate myself. I need to realign myself. Where am I? I've come to like shunya, like in Hindi, you say you've come to point zero. You have to restart. You've got to start again. And I could not have done that being in Delhi. I had to step away. I had to be in isolation. I had to completely re-assimilate myself, put myself back together, because I was all over the place and I was scattered. Not just, but I was scattered emotionally, mentally, psychologically, physically. And I knew I had to put myself together. And the only answer was sadhana. Only answer was silence. Only answer was to go within. And that's how I got here. I just left everything. I'm living out of a backpack. But what I feel is that if you recognize and listen to your inner voice, you will find the answer. Of course, there is pain. I mean, I felt my last few months have been the darkest night of the soul. But what am I doing about it? What am I doing? Am I taking action? Am I recognizing it? Am I in awareness? Because I think that's the key. And you're dying every day. One part of you dies every day. That I call death. The egoic death. One part of you, one attribute of you, one aspect of you. You're burying one aspect of you on a daily basis.
Well, I like to think of the ego as expanding its horizons to include ultimately everything, rather than annihilating it, which is really impossible. But as you were speaking, I was thinking about when I drive to an appointment that I have never been to that address before. I have this driving instruction from GPS.
Yes.
And so I punch in the address, and this voice comes on and tells me how to go. And if I make a wrong turn inadvertently, I hear the voice again saying, recalculating.
Yes.
And then will steer me in the correct way. Now that's
Correct,
our conscience, you see. We can rely on GPS to drive the automobile from point A to point B, but nobody has taught us to rely on our own inner guidance to know what's to be done and what's not to be done. But I think that the pain that is so evident today worldwide with the political situation worldwide and with the pandemic, people know, and they know that they know on some level, that something has to change. We cannot sustain life as human beings the way we were headed.
So Mahiema, you are an agent of change. And I like to think that we are as well. But that calling, this is not just something you decided to do. This is something beyond that. You are enlisted by powers beyond your own to do the work that you do. And I think that is an important part of creativity in general, since that is the subject here that we're coming back to again and again. But the idea of courage is huge here. I don't know, I suppose that the powers that, whatever name you want to give to the powers that put each of us in the position that it gives to us.
Yes. Yeah.
I wonder how many people are tried, but they don't have the patience or the courage to do what is asked. You know, that, and maybe things never go that way, but that occurs to me that that you are tested along the way. You were tested. I was tested. Len was tested in different ways,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it is a matter of you grow each time. You can follow your courage,
Hmm.
and you can follow your inner wisdom about what is to be done, even
Yeah.
or even especially when it is at odds with the ideas of the people around you, the status quo.
Absolutely. 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 And I think I was about to say something to what you said. Uh, okay, never mind. It just went away. But yes, what I would like to say that yes, courage, of course, is important. But what is really what stops most people from taking that step is that they're so comfortable in their comfort zone.
Attachment.
Most of yes, the attachment and the comfort zone. They just aren't. I mean, there are so many people who keep asking me, but how could you do that? How could you do that?
And the fear of losing what they have and
Yeah,
not getting what they want.
yeah, yeah. And I actually physically made sure that I was becoming minimalist in my life since the last 3 years. I have been downsizing my life, literally, physically doing it, asking people to just take what they want. Because if I hadn't done that, I would have still been attached to the multiple 10,000 things I've collected all my life,
Yeah, yeah.
which I don't need. If I haven't touched something for 6 months, it doesn't serve any purpose in my life anymore. It needs to go,
Mhm.
you know? So I actually physically made that effort. I filled my courtyard with all the things and I called my friends. I actually had a garage sale and I said, just take what you want. Because it was important for me to get rid of the things which I hadn't taken a look at for the last few months.
Yeah, yeah.
So the whole idea is to be able to step out of your comfort zone and test yourself over and over and over again. Are you meeting your own standard of where you want to go? Of where you want to go? What do you want to achieve?
And
I
our
mean, my
experience is the more regularly that we can give up something that the mind, the ego is attached to, the more that
yes,
we're willing to give it up because we're being guided by the conscience to do so,
correct.
over time and repetition, we can see that something is coming to us because of that opening that we have
Yeah,
created. We are
totally.
going to be used creatively in a new way
Yeah,
that we could
yeah,
never have even conceived of yesterday.
absolutely. I totally agree. Totally. And I think COVID has been a very big teacher for the
Yes.
world because
Yes.
COVID has taught people that you really don't need much to live well. You really don't need much
Right.
because your wardrobes filled of all the goodies has been lying locked for 16, 18 months because you haven't stepped out of the house. And and you're okay. And you're
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
You know? So ultimately it boils down to you need very little.
Yeah.
You need very little. And it's important to set your goals, and that goal needn't be always multiple houses, big cars, or whatever, lockers filled with stuff. It has to be bigger than that. It has to be an expanded form of you as a being. How
Not
much?
that stuff is bad. Not that stuff is bad.
No, the stuff is not bad.
If
Absolutely.
I'm a filmmaker, uh, I need a camera.
Exactly. No, no,
So
I'm telling you, stuff is not bad at all.
right.
I'm not demeaning all those
No,
people
I
who
hear that. Yeah.
collect stuff. But what I'm saying is that unnecessarily, when you're hoarding, And what is it doing to you? You're getting more and more attached. And that's where the difference between Sukham and Anandam comes, that what is Sukham and what is pure bliss, what
Right.
is pure Anandam.
Right.
So you're just buying yourself momentary happiness,
That's right.
And
That's
I did not understand this for the longest time. I just thought these were bookish words because I was reading so much. But until I started living it, and I realized every moment, every time I do something or buy something or think of something, I'm only comparing this emotion between Sukham and Anandam. What is it bringing to me?
Well, I think that it does come down to the fact that even intuitively, not necessarily intellectually, but intuitively, people cannot conceive of themselves as being other than this body and this mind and our
Mm.
experiences. That all becomes me. And I'm
Yeah,
afraid of losing that with change, with giving up something, you
yeah,
know. And so
yeah,
that fear is and that sense of lack is intense in human beings. And
yeah.
and we're animals, and animals are prone to the herd instinct. We want to
Mm.
we want to run with the herd. We want to run in the center of the herd, so we're
Yeah.
not on the periphery where we might be injured.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Mahiema, in the book, we talk about um, the buddhi as conscience.
Yes.
Buddhi in India has different meanings,
Hmm.
and in our own understanding, we see as a part of it the attention to, is this the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, and that's usually the limit of what people think the conscience is. And I was wondering about your relationship to the idea of buddhi in a broad sense, and as buddhi as conscience. Can you talk to that and maybe tell us a little bit about how your awareness of that power within you came into your understanding? Were there particular practices that you undertook that made it obvious to you, or was it just the gifts that came to you through your life?
I would say both. I was fortunate of getting initiated into transcendental meditation when I was very young, in my
Mhm.
early teenage years, and that that kept me. At that time, it was all fun and games, because you're
Sure.
so young and you don't have any luggage you're carrying on your shoulders. So, one would levitate. It was like fun and games, literally. And I would love to do it beyond 20 minutes at that point in time. But as you grow older and you're getting stifled under the pressure of life, um, you are lesser and lesser going into that state, which it initially started. So that was my go-to for a long time. TM was my go-to every time I would falter, I wanted to ground myself, I wanted to put myself back together, I would get it through meditation. And the other thing which kept me at that level was my love for dancing. I did classical Indian dance, Kathak, for a long
Mhm.
time. So that was my biggest uh, uh, passion. Passion. I mean, I would dance for hours and hours, and uh, so that, I think, my heart took over. I mean, I kind of became a heart person, uh, and that's where I think uh, the voice of the conscience comes from. You know.
Mahima, I
So
don't know if you're
yeah.
familiar with this, but Swami Rama taught his students that when you are in a challenging situation that seems very oppressive, and and it's so oppressive that your shoulders bend over and you become hunched over because of the weight of all these problems that you have, he would ask this simple question: now, are you dancing? Because if you know who you are and you know who you are not, and you know the infinite possibilities that exist between two thoughts, then you will dance even through challenging times. And
Mm.
and you can do so with a light heart, and you can play uh, and be creative even in the midst of a catastrophe.
Yes, I could. I can very well relate to that, and I think the literal sense dancing happened with me for the longest time. I mean, I'd like to give a small example here to what Leonard said. I was shooting a film, a documentary on Ayurveda
Mhm.
in Kerala, and we were to travel from Trichy to a place uh, near Cochin, and I was doing another documentary there on Kuti Chatan. Kuti Chatan, if you know, Kuti means small, Chatan means God. So he's a small form of Vishnu. And he's a very playful God because he's a child, and you can easily please him and appease him and get your work done. So people who are, and there are two kinds of believers of Kuti Chatan. They are the dark side, and they are the proper healers of Kuti Chatan. So I was going to the healer who was using Kuti Chatan to heal people. So from Ayurveda place, we were driving up to the Kuti Chatan temple, and obviously, whenever you touch upon such subjects, I've always gone through an acid test, always, always. And I take it, like, I look up and I say, now what? What do you have for me now? So so while I was about to leave from the Ayurveda place, I started throwing up. And my boy said, don't worry, ma'am, we will pick up some medicines on the way. But the Ayurveda place said, no, we will give you a concoction. So they gave me some liquid concoction. I drank it. I said, okay, I should be fine. But I threw that up as well. I was like real dehydrated. Throughout the way from that Ayurveda place to the Kuti Chatan place, I was throwing up like crazy. So by the time we reached that place, the Kuti Chatan healer apparently already knew that I'm going to come in a state which was completely like worn out and rubbished. So he had booked a place for me in the hospital nearby. So he said, you need to go there first and we'll talk about this. So I was hospitalized, I was put on glucose, and I zonked out. When I came back to senses, they got me some tea and everything. I had it and I said, we're going back, right? He says, no, we have been refused because Kuti Chatan has not given us permission to shoot. I said, I don't care. I'm going to sit there under the banana tree until we get the permission from Kuti Chatan. He's tested me. He's made me go through this. Now he cannot send me back without not getting it. So I went back to him and I told the healer, I said, I don't care. I'm going to have coconuts from your tree. I'm going to have bananas from your tree. And I'm sitting here. Even if it takes another 24 hours, we are going to be here because I'm not going back without the interview. So he said, okay, but it doesn't ever happen. If he says no, it is no. I said, okay, we'll see. And as luck would have it, a few hours later, he said, come, get your camera. So we are going to. So it's like it has become a fun and game with God, because it is like, I know for sure I'm going to be tested. I know for sure he's going to really bamboo me, and I'm going to, but I'm no less, So it's like almost dancing your way through.
That's right.
Yes,
It was
yes.
like an answer to your question.
That's right.
It's like dancing your way through.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
you're on the right track, as you were then, it is, Len and I were talking about this morning in relation to the way this book is being received. It's just, in a couple of weeks, it's been very well received. And we were saying, there's a feeling that this game is rigged in our favor. That this is happening. Outrageous as it might be. We're having this conversation with you, Mahiema. It's amazing because the game is rigged in our favor. If God says so,
yeah,
it will
the
be.
universe is batting in your favor.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So we in our history, Len and I spent 9 years every Saturday morning in a Gita study group at the Hindu temple in Albany, here nearby here.
Wow.
And that community, the original community, there were about 6 or 7 of us. It was like family, for years. It was a beautiful thing. And we lived each other's lives and deaths. And, it was a cohesive understanding in that group that I had never experienced before in my, in family or the social life that I had ever had before. And then later, more people came in, but this was our experience of Indian society very, very strongly, because we were very, very much enmeshed in it. And we found that all the wisdom, the beautiful power of the Gita is memorized by a lot of Indians. They know, they have been taught, but they don't understand how to make it real, how to make it, how to become Arjuna and be able to live the way Krishna is telling him that he needs to react and respond rather to the challenges. I was wondering, do you have any understanding of how your own story that you told us, in what ways it conflicted with the parameters of the social parameters and family parameters that you grew up in? Has it been a creative force in your life? Has the overcoming of it perhaps been a creative force in your life?
I think overcoming because they could never understand why I wanted to do what I wanted to do, and why would I want to chase the unknown territory and go into areas which people don't know of or have never treaded upon. So initially it was just my parents, but later even my friends, my siblings, till today they don't understand. So I stopped explaining.
Right.
So I would just be who I am. And after a point, it was accepted. I mean, I do remember lots and lots of conversations and arguments happening over the dining table, as to when are you ever going to make any money? When are you ever going to do commercial work?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And and so that was a very big question, that you're sitting in a commercial city like Mumbai, where there is the floodgate can open up to opportunities, and look what you're chasing. Why wouldn't you want to make some money, or why wouldn't you want to do commercial? So the point is, my conversation was directly with the universe, with God. So if you're opening this door for me, then take care of me.
That's right.
Then make sure that I'm okay. Make sure. I mean, my question was never to get other people to fall in line with me. No, my question was that if you've chosen me to do your work or to be your vessel in any form, then I think it's your responsibility to just make sure that I'm okay. And that pulled me through. And that pulled me through very beautifully. I don't know how. I've been a single parent. I don't know how I managed, but it went on so beautifully, so beautifully. So everything got taken care of very well, in fact.
You
And
know,
yeah,
I was going to say
yeah.
that both Leonard and I have found the same thing, that when you trust that the power that is calling you is going to take care of what needs to be
Yeah.
taken care of, it happens. It
Yeah.
happens in ways you could not imagine. The most outrageous
Yeah.
things happen.
Totally, totally. And the other very important thing that happened in my journey with regards to creativity and spirituality is because I was choosing these subjects, you know, for the films, I was not choosing, they were choosing me, whether
That's
it was
Mhm.
people or whatever, they were choosing me. So as these subjects were coming, they were also catalysts for my own change. They were catalysts in bringing about a very deep inner transformation.
Very
And
familiar.
yes, and that's what happened. And what also happened was, because I was born and raised in a Hindu family with lots of rituals and belief systems and all of that, I I was always questioning the form of God. And I started really reading, researching, and from my films started asking this question, that is there a formless way of trusting you or knowing you or understanding you or living you? You know, if I'm living the life which you have charted out for me by your standards, then there shouldn't be just one form wanting me to do that. It has to
Mhm.
be a formless form of divine where
so
all of them are
so
together.
that's the beauty of meditation and
God.
following a mantra into the silence
Mm.
to experience that formless form
Yes.
where consciousness is
Jesus
aware
fucking
of
Christ.
Yeah.
Almighty.
consciousness.
And
So this,
fortunately, this prayer has been answered.
Mhm.
Fortunately, this quest uh, has been satiated to some extent.
But the idea of this form and formlessness,
And it's not
Mm.
over.
the
It's
no, it's
not
not.
over.
The idea of of creativity is this is our role as human beings here, is to give form to that which is formless. That is creativity. That's what we're good for. That's what we're good with.
Yeah,
Whether we're dancing
yeah.
or making a film or painting a painting or singing a song or
Mm.
teaching, that is the formless thing that has to be given form through us, through the creative
Yes,
person.
absolutely, absolutely. And you give it a meaning, and you give it a form, whether it's rightly, like you paint or a film or a poetry or whatever. You give it a form because you want to derive a meaning out of that formless.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And there is an urge. It is almost like an assignment that it has to be done, and that it has to be done because it has to be out there.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And what comes out of it, what emerges out of it, is so beautifully. Like I am completely in love with Ma Ganga. It's like when I sit by her bank, the only thing is that just make me like you. Just make me like you.
Mhm.
And I'm here. I am here because I would like to now just completely dedicate the rest of my life by your bank. And just how may I serve? What may I do? You know? So that is for me true divinity, true creativity. If I want to create something, I want to create just the way she flows, you know. I would
Mhm.
like to be in the flow and create something which comes out of without my mind thinking, but my heart going into that flow.
Well, that
And
happens increasingly as we dedicate ourselves and make all life our spiritual practice, our sadhana.
yeah, 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 yeah. That's it.
Mahiema, We have a friend, Sudha Pinnatar. Is she, you might know of her from Delhi. I don't know. She's an importer and exporter of Indian arts and crafts. Many, many years ago, a long, long time ago, 30 or more years ago, we asked her to look for a large bronze Shiva Nataraj for us.
Okay.
And we were expecting something maybe 3 feet high, but we wanted a large one for a house that we were considering building. Never built the house, but that's another story. But she found something for us. It is an absolutely beautiful piece that was originally bought or committed to by the Los Angeles County Museum. I don't know what happened, but they reneged on that, and the price was lowered, and it was in the range that we thought we could pay. So we said yes to it sight unseen. And it arrived weeks later, bursting out of its crate with, the flames going through the plywood. But I mentioned that because it is big enough that you can, stand in front of it and lean into it. A beautiful thing. And in it, the Ganga is the little figure that's caught in Shiva's dreadlocks. She's a goddess above the waist, and below the waist, she's a mermaid. She's a fish. And I know that has various, there are stories about her being dropped into India and she becomes the river. But in my own, it came to me a long time ago, I've used that is, if Shiva Nataraj is the panoply of everything happening, we are here as Gangaji, because we are the creative force, and we are caught in this big show. But this is where we are. This is what we give. This is where we work from, is from Shiva's hair. That has to be how our creativity enters this world.
Absolutely. And in fact, I would give different connotations to that. One is he's the dancing Shiva. So he's the dance of life. And this is the flow of creativity coming through the dance of life.
Yes.
And the creativity can only come when you're dropping your guards and you're just flowing.
That's
when
right.
You drop your guards and you allow that fire from within you, the fire in the belly to really.
All these choices that we have that require courage asks of us, are we willing to surrender? Are we willing to surrender to that force, to that wisdom? And if we are, then it will carry us creatively to very rewarding relationships.
Absolutely. I agree.
Before we let you go, Mahiema, I would like to ask you a question. It was wonderful that you wrote us that very glowing endorsement of the book. Thank you so much for that. I would ask you, is there anything in particular, one passage or one idea in that book that was of memorable importance to you?
Yes, I found one particular portion very interesting. On page 50, on conscience, under conscience, there is this sometimes the loud insistence of the ego, senses, memories, imagination, fear, anger, and selfish desires can become the sole basis upon which the conscience makes a decision. I think that stood out for me, because our task is to quiet the distracting noise in order to better hear the priceless signal of the conscience. This is the essential step in coordinating all the 4 functions of the mind, so we can experience the highest good. And I could completely relate to this with vis-a-vis my experience right now with my life, because whatever may have led me to come to this path, they definitely was something which were being in contradiction to my real conscience. And that's why it had to push me into being in this space, so I could meet my highest good. And that instantly, it's like flew out of the pages for the book. And
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I'm so glad that we've met.
I'm glad too. I'm very glad to have met all of
We
you.
are looking forward to the relationship.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you, Mahiema.
Thank you.
Stay
Thank
well.
you so much. Yeah. You
I
too.
wish you
Thank you.
love in everything.
Thank you.
I would like to also offer my gratitude, Mahiema, for your time and for your openness, your generosity, for sharing of yourself so authentically with us. It was really meaningful, and I'm so grateful to be embarking on this relationship with you. Thank you so
Likewise.
much. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
A recording will be available for those of you who would like to share this with friends. A recording will be posted on our website in the next week and also on our YouTube channel. If you missed our first conversation with Dr. Pettis, that is also posted there now as well. We would again ask that if you found this conversation meaningful, to please consider making a donation to help us support the costs, to cover the costs of publishing this book. As you know, those costs are outside of the typical budget of AMI. So any gift really does make a difference, and we really are sincerely appreciative. The easiest way to do that is to go to our GoFundMe page, gofundme.com/yourconscience. And last, we hope to see you in a few weeks for our next conversation on your conscience. That will be on Sunday, October 3rd at 3 p.m. And our guest will be Dr. Bernie Siegel, who is a longtime friend of AMI, who of course needs no introduction. We are delighted that Bernie has also agreed to lend his voice to this important conversation, and I'm looking very much forward to meeting him. Thank you again for choosing to be with us here this morning, and I wish you the rest of a wonderful day. Namaste.
Namaste.